The blizzard hit somewhere around Leadville, turning the interstate into a white-knuckle nightmare of ice and prayer. My Subaru's headlights carved twin tunnels through the swirling snow, illuminating nothing but more snow, more road, more reasons I should have stayed in Denver. But the tip had been too good to ignore. 3 months of dead-end articles about municipal corruption and water rights disputes had left me, desperate for anything that might salvage what was left of my journalism career. When the email arrived from a username called Timekeeper1982, I'd almost deleted it as spam. Haven, Colorado, population 847. Look at the census records. Same names, same faces. Since 1976, they don't age, Marcus. Nobody ages in Haven. The sender claimed to be a former FBI agent named Dorothy Brennan, who'd investigated the town in the early 80s before vanishing. The email included coordinates, grainy photographs, and a single line that made my skin crawl. Check the high school yearbook. Senior class of 76. You'll understand. I should have ignored it, should have deleted the email and gone back to covering city council meetings. But 36 years of life had taught me that the best stories, the ones that matter, always begin with someone trying to warn you away. The GPS died somewhere past Fairplay, but I'd memorized the route. County Road 285 to Forest Service Road 412. Then follow the signs for Haven until the signs stopped making sense. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes that seemed to hang in the air longer than physics allowed. When I finally saw the lights of the town spread out in the valley below, I felt something I hadn't experienced since childhood. The peculiar relief of finding civilization in the wilderness, coupled with the nagging certainty that I was making a terrible mistake. Haven looked like every other small Colorado mountain town, the kind of place that thrived in the mining boom. Survived the bust, and now scraped by on hunting season and the occasional lost tourist. Main Street was a collection of weathered storefronts, American flags snapping in the wind, and pickup trucks coated in road salt and good intentions. The Haven Motor Lodge sat at the town's edge like an afterthought, its neon sign flickering vacancy in pink cursive. The clerk was a woman in her 30s with auburn hair and the kind of smile that suggested she'd been expecting me. "Rough night for driving," she said, sliding a registration card across the scarred wooden counter. "You're lucky you made it before the pass closed. Does it close often? It's more than you'd think." She studied me with pale green eyes. "Business or pleasure, Mr. Reed? Marcus Reed?" "I'm a journalist." Something flickered across her expression, too quick to identify, too deliberate to ignore.
"Oh, Mr. Reed, you've picked an interesting time to visit. Storm's supposed to last 3 days.
The room was clean, but dated, with wood paneling that belonged in 1975 and carpet that might have been brown once. I dumped my bag on the bed and checked my phone. No signal. The landline worked, but when I tried calling my editor, the line just rang and rang, as if the world beyond Haven had simply stopped answering. Morning brought crystal clear skies and the kind of mountain air that makes you believe in fresh starts. It even looked different in daylight, older somehow, like a town that had been holding its breath for decades. The Copper Kettle Diner occupied a corner lot on Main Street, its chrome exterior polished to a mirror shine. Inside, red vinyl booths and black and white checkered floors created the illusion that I'd stepped into a Norman Rockwell painting. The illusion lasted until I noticed the jukebox playing "Don't Go Breaking My Heart," and realized it was the same song that had been on the radio when I'd driven into town. The waitress approached with a coffee pot and that peculiar small-town friendliness that felt both genuine and rehearsed. Her name tag read Sarah, and she looked to be in her early 30s, blonde hair and a ponytail. Laugh lines that suggested she enjoyed her work. "You're the journalist," she said, filling my cup without asking. "Word travels fast in a town this size." "Good word or bad word, jury's still out," she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What brings you to Haven, Mr. Reed?" "Research. I'm working on a piece about small mountain communities, how they adapt, survive, thrive." "Survive." She repeated the word like she was tasting it. "That's one way to put it. I ordered eggs over easy and hash browns, and while I waited, I studied the walls." The Copper Kettle was clearly the town's unofficial museum, its walls covered with decades of photographs, newspaper clippings, and memorabilia. Near the register, a framed copy of the Haven Herald was dated July 4th, 1976. The headline read, "Haven celebrates bicentennial of town, looking toward the future, but it was the photograph beneath the headline that made me pause. A group shot of the town's residents gathered around the gazebo in the park, all smiling for the camera. I scanned the faces and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Sarah stood in the front row, wearing a different dress but the same face. It's the same exact face, down to the laugh lines, and the way she tilted her head slightly to the left. "That's a great photo," I said when she returned with my food. She glanced at the wall and nodded. Bicentennial celebration, for my time, of course. Took a bite of eggs that suddenly tasted like cardboard. "Your mother, maybe? You look just like her." Sarah's hand tightened on the coffee pot. "Something like that?" The Haven High School had been closed since 1995, according to the sign, but the building looked like it had been abandoned much longer. But a prairie grass grew through cracks in the parking lot, and several windows on the second floor were boarded up. But the front door was unlocked, and my footsteps echoed in hallways that still smelled faintly of chalk and teenage desperation. The principal's office yielded nothing but empty filing cabinets and a motivational poster from 1987. But the library dusty, sun-streaked, and forgotten contained exactly what I was looking for. A complete collection of yearbooks dating back to the school's founding in 1922. I found the 1976 edition on a shelf marked Local History. The cover featured a stylized mountain peak and the words Haven High Pioneers Bicentennial Edition. Inside, the usual collection of senior portraits, club photos, and advertisements from local businesses that probably no longer existed. The senior class was small, only 23 graduates. I flipped through the individual portraits, noting names like Thompson and Martinez and Brennan. Sarah Winters smiled up at me from page 47, looking exactly as she had that morning in the diner. But it was the class photograph on page 51 that made my hand shake. 23 teenagers arranged in 3 rows, with their names printed in neat block letters beneath. Front row, second from the left, Marcus Reed. My own face stared back at me from the page, 47 years younger, but unmistakably mine. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same scar above the left eyebrow from a childhood accident. The name beneath the photo was printed in the same font as all the others. I slammed the yearbook shut and sat in the dusty silence, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. A relative, maybe. A distant cousin who'd shared my name and resembled me. But even as I formed the explanation, I knew it was a lie. The face in the photograph wasn't similar to mine, it was identical. Down to the mole on my right cheek and the slightly crooked nose I'd inherited from my father. When I finally left the library, clutching the yearbook under my arm, I discovered that my car was gone. The space where I'd parked my Subaru was empty except for a rectangle of melted snow and a few drops of what might have been oil. I walked the perimeter of the school parking lot twice, checking behind the building and even in the overgrown field beyond, but the car had simply vanished. Back on Main Street, I found Deputy Tom Garrett drinking coffee outside the sheriff's office. He was a lean man with graying temples and the patient expression of someone who'd heard every excuse in the book. Car trouble? Car's gone. Someone stole it from the high school parking lot. Garrett sipped his coffee and nodded like this was perfectly normal. "When did you first notice it missing?" "About 10 minutes ago. I was in the library researching." "Research? Oh." He made a note in a small black book. "For your article, word really did travel fast in Haven." "Yes, and when I came out, my car was gone." "Happens sometimes. Folks get confused about where they parked, especially visitors. Town can be disorienting. I'm not confused. Someone stole my car. We'll file a report." Garrett's tone suggested he'd be filing it in the circular file. "In the meantime, I'd suggest staying at the motor lodge. Storm's supposed to get worse tonight." I looked up at the cloudless blue sky. What storm? When I turned back, Deputy Garrett was gone. That evening, I sat in my motel room with the yearbook open on the narrow desk, staring at my own face across nearly 5 decades. The rational part of my mind, the part trained to verify facts and expose lies, scrambled for explanations. Photoshop, though the book looked genuinely aged. A practical joke, though no one in Haven seemed to have a sense of humor. A coincidence so unlikely it bordered on the impossible. But the journalist in me recognized something else, a pattern. Sarah at the diner, looking exactly as she had in 1976. The clerk at the motel, whose name I'd learned was Beth Martinez, also present in the bicentennial photograph, unchanged. Even Deputy Garrett appeared in several pictures spanning the 70s and 80s, his face frozen at the same patient middle age. I'd stumbled onto something bigger than I'd imagined. Not just an urban legend or a conspiracy theory, but something that defied every natural law I'd ever taken for granted. My phone still had no signal, but I found a notebook in the desk drawer and began making a list of everyone I'd encountered, cross-referencing them with names from the yearbook and the old newspaper clipping. The pattern held. Every person I'd met in Haven had been photographed in 1976, and none of them had aged a day. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Slow, deliberate steps that paused outside my door. I held my breath and waited, but no knock came. After several minutes, the footsteps moved on, but something told me to look outside. Through the gap in the curtains, I could see Main Street bathed in silver moonlight. And beyond the town, in the forest that climbed toward the peaks, a soft red glow pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Sleep, when it finally came, brought dreams of faces I recognized, but had never met. Conversations and voices that seemed familiar, though I was certain I'd never heard them before. And running through it all, a low humming sound that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. I woke before dawn with the taste of copper in my mouth, and the absolute certainty that I needed to find the source of that red light. Haven's only church was a simple white structure at the end of Maple Street, its steeple dark against the pre-dawn sky. The front door was locked, but a side entrance led to a basement that smelled of old coffee and older secrets. Pastor William Hughes sat in a circle of folding chairs, his blind eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. He was ancient, truly ancient, with skin like parchment and hands that trembled with more than age. But when he spoke, his voice was strong and clear. "You're the journalist. It wasn't a question. You found the yearbook. How did you—" "I've been waiting for you, Marcus. We all have." The casual use of my name sent ice down my spine. It's waiting for me specifically, or just waiting for someone like me, both. Neither. He gestured to the chair across from him with one shaking hand. "Sit, there isn't much time, and there's so much you need to understand." I remained standing. "Start with my face in that yearbook." Pastor Hughes smiled, and for a moment, I glimpsed the young man he might have been decades ago. "Haven has always been special, Marcus. You knew it. Called this Valley Wa-TUM-PA- the place where time sleeps. They avoided it. Knew better than to wake what slumbers beneath the mountain." "What's beneath the mountain?" "Something old. Something hungry. Something that feeds on time itself." He stood slowly, supporting himself on the back of his chair. "Come, let me show you what we've been guarding." Behind the altar, hidden by a panel that looked like part of the wall, was a door. It's not just any door. This one was carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe when I wasn't focusing on them. "The miners found it in 1923, Pastor Hughes said, producing an old brass key. "A cave system that shouldn't exist, filled with structures that weren't built by human hands. By the time they realized what they'd awakened, it was too late." The door opened onto a staircase that descended into absolute darkness. The humming sound I'd heard in my dreams grew stronger with each step, and the air itself seemed to thicken, as if we were walking underwater. "It took the first group of miners in 1924, the pastor continued, his voice echoing off unseen walls. 7 men who went down and never came back up. But their families still see them sometimes, walking the streets at night, looking exactly as they did the day they disappeared." We reached the bottom of the stairs, and Pastor Hughes flicked on a battery-powered lantern. The light revealed a natural cavern that stretched beyond our view, its walls covered in the same twisted symbols I'd seen on the door. But it was the thing in the center of the cavern that made my breath catch. It wasn't a machine exactly, though it had mechanical components. It wasn't alive, though it pulsed with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. It was a mass of crystalline structures and metallic conduits, organic curves and impossible angles, all surrounding a core that glowed with soft red light. "What is it?" "Call it the anchor," Pastor Hughes said. "It holds Haven in place, keeps us safe from the flow of time, but it demands payment." "Payment?" "New residents. Fresh time to feed on." His blind eyes turned toward me. "Every few years, someone new arrives. A traveler, a researcher, someone drawn by the mystery, and they become part of Haven, part of the loop." part of the payment. I backed toward the stairs, but Pastor Hughes held up a warning hand. Running won't help, Marcus. Haven chose you long before you chose Haven. You've been coming here your whole life, in ways you're only beginning to understand. I ran anyway. Up the stairs, through the church, out into the morning light that seemed too bright and too sharp. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted down Main Street. I passed the diner where Sarah was serving breakfast to the same customers she'd probably been serving for decades. Past the sheriff's office where Deputy Garrett watched me with patient eyes. The motor lodge seemed like safety, but when I burst through the door of my room, I found something waiting for me that shattered the last of my rational explanations. On the desk, next to the yearbook I'd left open, was a laptop computer. My laptop computer, the one I'd left in Denver. The screen was glowing, showing an email draft I didn't remember writing. Subject Haven. Colorado 2. Undisclosed recipients, there's something wrong with this place. I've been here 3 days, and I'm starting to understand why Dorothy Brennan never made it back to Washington. The residents don't age. They can't leave. And somehow, impossibly, I'm connected to this place in ways that predate my own birth. If you're reading this, it means I managed to send it before they. The email was unfinished, but the timestamp showed it had been saved 47 years ago. I scrolled through the laptop's files with shaking hands, finding folder after folder of research I'd never conducted. Photographs of havens spanning decades, all showing the same faces. Census records that should have been impossible to obtain. And buried in a folder labeled Personal, a series of journal entries written in my own handwriting, documenting visits to Haven I'd never made. June 15, 1995. Returned to Haven after 18 months away. The anchor is stronger now, its influence reaching further. Found myself drawn back despite my best efforts to stay away. September 3, 2001. Something is changing. The loops are getting shorter, and the boundaries between past and present are blurring. I saw myself today, or will see myself walking down Main Street in clothes I haven't bought yet. December 21st, 2012. Tried to warn the others, but they can't hear me anymore. Becoming part of the pattern, part of the mechanism. The journalist who investigates Haven is just another function of the anchor, another way it maintains itself. Final entry was dated yesterday. October 15th, 2023. He's coming. The journalist. Myself, but not myself. The cycle begins again, and this time I understand my role. I am the lure, the mystery, the hook that draws new victims to Haven. I am the urban legend that feeds the anchor. I am so very sorry. The motel room began to shift around me, walls breathing like living tissue. Furniture rearranging itself when I wasn't looking directly at it. Through the window I could see Haven changing, cycling through different eras like a slideshow of architectural history. The diner became a saloon, then a general store, then a diner again. Cars on Main Street shifted from modern sedans to vintage trucks, to horse-drawn wagons, and back again. I was watching Haven's true nature reveal itself. Not a town trapped in time, but a town that existed in all times simultaneously. A temporal nexus where past and present and future collapsed into a single hungry moment. The door to my room opened, and I walked in. Not someone who looked like me, not a relative or a doppelganger. Me, wearing clothes I recognized but had never owned, moving with my mannerisms but lacking my memories. "You're handling this better than I expected," he said, settling into the room's single chair. Most versions of us have a complete breakdown by this point. Most versions? The anchor doesn't just trap people in time, Marcus. It creates temporal echoes versions of the same person existing at different points in the loop. I'm you from 1976. He's you from 1995. He gestured toward the window, where I could see another version of myself walking down Main Street. And you're the you from 2023, drawn here by emails and clues, left by versions of yourself stretching back decades? This is impossible. The word impossible loses meaning when you're dealing with something that exists outside the normal flow of causality. The other me leaned forward, and I could see the weight of decades in his eyes. We've been the journalist investigating Haven for 47 years, Marcus. Every few years, a new version of us arrives, discovers the truth, and becomes part of the mechanism that draws the next version. How do we stop it? We don't. We can't. The anchor needs our particular combination of curiosity and stubbornness. and willingness to dig deeper than we should. We're the perfect bait for drawing other researchers, other journalists, other people who might threaten its existence. Through the walls, I could hear the low humming growing stronger, and the red light from the forest was beginning to seep through the windows like fog. What happens now? Now, you become part of Haven. Your memories will fade, replaced by new ones that fit the pattern. You'll remember growing up here, going to school with Sarah and Beth and the others. You'll remember graduating in 1976, getting a job at the Haven Herald, spending decades watching newcomers arrive and disappear. And if I refuse? The other me smiled sadly. You can't refuse, Marcus. You're already part of it. You've been since the moment you first heard of Haven, in whatever timeline you came from. The anchor doesn't just trap its victims, it rewrites their entire history to ensure they always end up here. The humming reached a crescendo, and the room filled with red light. I felt my memories beginning to blur at the edges, my life in Denver becoming distant and uncertain. Had I ever really lived there? Had I ever been anywhere but Haven? The last thing I remember clearly was looking into my other self's eyes and seeing not madness, but a terrible, infinite sadness. The blizzard hit somewhere around Leadville, turning the interstate into a white-knuckle nightmare of ice and prayer. The journalist Shung, skeptical, desperate for a career-making story, gripped the steering wheel of his rented Honda and cursed the weather, the mountains, and the anonymous tip that had brought him to this godforsaken corner of Colorado. I watched him from the window of the Haven Herald office where I'd been working as editor for how long? The memories were vague, but they felt real enough. Growing up in Haven, graduating with the class of '76, watching the town change and grow over the decades, except the town hadn't changed, had it? The same faces walked the same streets, served the same coffee, pumped the same gas. Only the newcomers brought variety, brief disruptions in the pattern, before they too became part of Haven's eternal rhythm. The journalist's car pulled into the Motor Lodge parking lot, and I could see Beth at the front desk, preparing to offer him the same welcoming smile she'd given me so many years ago. Soon he'd visit the diner, meet Sarah, find his way to the old school and the yearbook that would shatter his understanding of the world. I opened my laptop and began typing the email that would draw the next one after him, adding another layer to the web of mysteries and coincidences that kept the anchor fed. It was my role now, my function in the great machine that kept Haven alive and hungry. The words flowed easily, as if I'd written them 1,000 times before. Subject, Haven. Colorado 2. Email protected. There's something you need to know about a small mountain town in Colorado. The residents don't age. They haven't since 1976. I know how this sounds, but I have proof. I paused, looking out at the journalist as he struggled with his luggage in the snow. Soon he would understand, as I had understood, as all the others had understood. Haven was not just a place, but a process. Not just a town, but a trap. Not just a mystery, but a mechanism for perpetuating itself across time and space and possibility. And somewhere beneath it all, in the red-lit caverns below the church, the anchor hummed its ancient song and dreamed its hungry dreams, counting the days until the next arrival, the next echo, the next soul to add to its collection.